When I landed on Omaha, I was an 18-year-old kid. Our thoughts was, don't be a coward. Don't be a coward. Don't let your buddies down.
We were there. It was still very dark when we approached the landing zones.
About 3 o'clock in the morning, the big naval ships began to pound the area. It was terrible. There were shells flying all around.
It was so devastating. The best 4th of July we ever saw. Nothing can be alive on the beach.
We couldn't see the beach because of the smoke.
The LCT next to the one I was on took a direct hit, and you saw bodies flying through the air.
Because you could see the machine gun making a little splashes in the water as they were traversing back and forth, back and forth. And of course, when the boats came in, then they just zeroed in the ramp. Once that ramp went down, the machine gun went right in. That's where most of the guys were killed, right on the boat. When he finally came ashore, he says, there's 2 kinds of people on this beach, those that are dead and those that are gonna die. Let's get the hell out of here. But 5 or 6 other destroyers came in. That is what saved Omaha Beach.
Whatever was there before just can't exist anymore.
It was terrible. I didn't think I was gonna live through it.
I think the worst part was getting off the beach because we'd been transshipped from the tank landing craft onto a Rhino, and by the time we got to the beach and the ramp should have gone down, and the first vehicle off should have been a Scamel, recovery vehicle to pull in, it got stuck, and that got stuck coming down the ramp. The plan was to go down through Lyon-sur-Mer, and then we had a line of march inland. The orders were simply to liberate Caen. It was horrific. It was horrific because several of us got lost. It was the landscape was a moonscape, not a landscape. The bomb craters they lipped each other, and it was difficult getting in. The devastation had to be seen to be believed. The first people I saw, or we saw, appeared from out of the ground with white helmets on. They were the Maquis, the French resistant people coming out to greet us. When we asked, where was the enemy, the Salomon party, they'd gone, they'd scarpered. So they were well out of Caen then, but they were still on the southern side of the city. I think in a word one could say it was a bit sobering, because you realise from what was going on that it could be a bit unhealthy. They were decimated. They were just shot down like flies, really. It was sad. The battle for Caen, Goodwood, Monte Cristo, all separate engagement in their own settings. It's difficult, looking back, to think that they were all part of a jigsaw leading to success that we ultimately achieved. I think, like many of my generations who were involved in this, we have to admit in retrospect we were fighting not a ruthless enemy, but a damn good, well-trained, well-prepared enemy. I think the good Lord, he must have been on our side for the victory to have come like it did. If he hadn't have been, it wouldn't have happened. It's as simple as that.
I have a buddy, Ray Lampert, who was wounded 3 times in 15 minutes. He was in a safe position on the beach. A wounded guy cried out from the water. Ray went out there, dragged him in, got wounded. Went out a second time, got wounded, dragged the guy in. The 3rd time he went out for a guy. This guy knew he was dying. When the machine guns, you could see the machine guns coming, Ray says. This guy, who was already wounded, climbed on top of Ray and protected him with his body, because he knew he was gone. And that's what saved Ray. But Ray took another wound to the head, and he was evacuated. And they gave him a Silver Star for valor. But in today's army, he would have got a Medal of Honor. They had no idea what a hero this Ray Lampert was, because he would never tell them. So I have to tell them. But that's your combat medics. They went out of their way to save those guys. I give them a lot of credit, a lot of credit. me tell you something about an American soldier. American soldiers are well trained, but they always think they know more than their leader. They could hardly wait for that platoon sergeant or lieutenant to get lost so he could take over. In the German army, they were not taught that. They did not think for themselves. When the sergeant got killed, that was it. They didn't think, they wouldn't dare make it. But in America, they were all waiting, privates were waiting to take over because they figured they could do a better job. And that's how we survived, believe it or not. I have to tell you, and I don't want to burst people's bubbles, but I went through World War II, Korea, Vietnam. I never heard a dying man call for his mother. To me, that's Hollywood. Now, people swear they heard guys say that. Maybe they did, but I never heard it. You know what they say? GD, why me? Son of a bitch, why me? Why me? And then they look up Chachi and say, I'm going to be okay, right, Sarge? And you look at the medic, and the medic goes, yeah, you're going to be okay, kid. You're going to be okay.
Our assignment was to stay on the beach and, by use of signal flags and lights, bring the landing craft that were still behind us with the so-called shock troops on them, bring them in a safe place. And that meant that we had to be on the beach, not up at the dune line, but down at the water line. And that was where all the shooting was going on. There was the 2nd, 4th, 6th, 7th, and I believe 9th beach battalions, none of which existed after the war. Just survivors. When Eisenhower decided we were going to go, didn't talk to us about it, but when he was ready, they thought they had that break in the morning in the weather, and we took off that night and went across the channel. It was still very dark when we approached the landing zones. One of the interesting things was the landing craft with rockets, where they would have just racks and racks and racks of rockets. And in the pre-dawn, to watch those things fire, it was amazing. It was just the best 4th of July we ever saw. It was so devastating, the way you'd see these things take off and see them land, and you'd think nothing can be alive on the beach. Nothing can still be in one piece. Everything has got to be destroyed. And at the same time this is going on, and recognizing that whatever was there before just can't exist anymore. We're looking at the beach, which is pretty scary because people are shooting at us. It's not a very friendly welcome to France, but they're shooting at us. We look back at the landing craft, and they're pulling, well, there's only one ramp left. They're pulling that up and backing off, and they're leaving us there. And a feeling of tremendous desolation. We're deserted, but at any rate, we only had one way to go, and that was in. And we got in by going from one obstacle to another. Then you're on an open beach that is zeroed in from every cliff you can see, with small arms, machine guns, and mortar with just about anything that you could describe as armament. They are firing at us, and the safest thing we could figure was to run across the beach toward them and get behind the dune line, which is a rather high pile of shale. And that's what we tried to do. There were a great number that obviously didn't make it. And all of the beach, every inch of it, was marked out in grids. They didn't have to fire for accuracy, fire for test, and then start to bombard. They knew exactly what the gun setting should be, and whenever they would spot a tank or a vehicle moving, or a group in one small group, they would just totally hail down on that particular grid and catch anything that was in it. A shell hit, and two of our corpsmen, a fellow named Frank Walden and Virgil Mounts, got up from what little protection we had and went out to take care of this guy. And then when they came back with the next round of shells, they landed very close to us, and it took out my hearing. The same shell killed Mounts. It blew shrapnel right through his body. And that same shrapnel hit Walden, who was kneeling across facing me, and they were much closer than you are to me right now. And I'm yelling at Burroughs, who is next to me. He's a pharmacist. And he won't move, and I can't understand, I can't hear him telling me. Eventually I get the idea. He's paralyzed. He was hit in the back more deeply than the rest of us. But everybody was wounded or killed. All of the guns were aimed at the beach. They weren't concerned so much with out in the channel, but at the beach, which meant that these big cement encasements were facing the aperture, the opening of it where the guns were facing the beach, not the water. And they couldn't get at them. The big guns from the warships couldn't hit them. The Air Force never came close to them. And they had like 12 feet of cement and pretty impregnable. But in our case, at our point, a destroyer, and I think the name of it was a McCook, I'm not sure, but it went way over on the port side, went in until it touched ground, touched the sand, and then took a sharp starboard turn and came at an angle so that it was coming where it could see the aperture. And it fired 2 shells. One was very close, and the next one went right through that thing and took it out. And it was done.
It was very rough. The weather was bad, and the LCT is flat-bottomed, and every time there was a wave, it would flop down, and your stomach came up to your throat. I think everybody on that ship was, on that LCT was seasick, and we were happy to get off, although it was terrible. There were shells flying all around. About 3 o'clock in the morning, the big naval ships began to pound the area, and the artillery from the land came onto the ships. The LCT next to the one I was on took a direct hit, and you saw bodies flying through the air. On the LCT, there was 1 tank and about 40 infantrymen. It was terrible. I didn't think I was going to live through it. When LCT dropped its front end down, I went into water up to my waist to get to the beach, and I was sure glad to get off of that flat-bottom boat because I was seasick. We set up a ammunition depot just up through the ravine from the landing on Omaha Beach, very near St. Laurent, I believe they pronounce it in Normandy. And we went up through this little ravine, and we had a map, and we knew where we were supposed to try to set up our ammunition depot, which we were able to do. But for many days, we didn't move any further because of the stiff resistance on land. And we were there for several weeks before they got enough territory for us to move further forward. We moved very slowly until after St. Lo fell. When St. Lo fell, we moved quite fast, and we got up to Paris, and the division was stopped, all the divisions were stopped, and they let the Free French come in to take Paris, which what they should have done, and they did it. I was a very fortunate young man when I went through the war, and I'm very happy to this day that I had the experience, but I don't want any more of it.
When I landed on Omaha, I was an 18-year-old kid, and I didn't give one thought about the country, mother, apple pie, and ice cream. Our thoughts was, don't be a coward. Don't be a coward. Don't let your buddies down. That's the one thing that was in our minds, our buddies. We loaded the Empire Anvil on the 3rd of June. Now, the invasion was supposed to be the 5th of June. They canceled it. Now, they wouldn't let us back inside the harbor because there was too many boats. We just circled outside, and the storm was still there. The storm let up a little bit, but it was murder. And as I told you, if you ever been seasick, all you want to do is die. Believe me, the troops, when they got on the landing craft, they could care less about the Germans and the fires. They were dying with being seasick. And thank the Lord I wasn't, because I was Merchant Marine. But it's the worst feeling. And we've been on that ship since the 3rd, remember? Well, when we were heading for the beach, we couldn't see the beach because of the smoke, the fires from what little bombardment there was there, and the current had been pushing us to the east, which we didn't know. We ended up almost 2 miles east of where we were supposed to have landed at 6:30 in the morning. The initial assault was L Company and I Company. Luckily, we were 2 miles off. We were heading for the British beaches to the east. And they realized their mistake. They turned around and came back. Unfortunately, while we were lost, all the boats from the right flank, which is easy red, was blown over onto our beach. They got our beach fouled, so we cannot get in. So we were circling out there like ducks, sitting ducks. And the Germans just picked off each boat. Bam, bam, bam. So all 4 boats were sunk and hit by mines. My boat was hit by pieces of this. This is a shell fragment from a German 88, the most accurate weapon in World War II. But this is the one that caused most of the damage on the beach because it was so accurate and had such a high muzzle velocity. But we figured this is the one that hit my boat, and my boat was capsized, and I was knocked unconscious. The next thing I knew, I found myself on the beach, propped up against the rock wall, underneath the protection of this cliff, which is on the very left flank, which is really Fox Red Beach. I was told later that 2 of my men in the boat dragged me ashore, propped me up against the ledge, and to this day, I don't know who did it. So I laid there on the beach from 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night when we were evacuated. I saw them starting to bring the dead and the wounded over, and I said, oh man, am I lucky? Am I lucky? Because if we didn't get blown up 200 yards out in the water, they would have hit us as soon as we hit the water line. The machine guns would have got us. And as I say, 5 riflemen right in the front of the ramp. We were the first 5 off. I wouldn't be here today. So it's a good thing that boat was blown up, really. That's what saved me. I have to tell you what I observed during the periods that I was conscious. I could never understand until later why some guys survived coming out of the water and other guys were hit. The Germans were trained to fire their machine guns in short bursts so you don't heat up the barrel. So in between the short bursts, whoever was in that line of fire survived. Because you could see the machine gun making a little splashes in the water as they were traversing back and forth, back and forth. And of course, when the boats came in, then they just zeroed in the ramp. Once that ramp went down, the machine gun went right in. That's where most of the guys were killed, right on the boat. The machine gun just went right in. The Air Force was supposed to bomb Omaha Beach before we landed. The whole idea was to make shell holes so we could get in and for some protection. Well, they were late in assembling over England. So by the time they got to the beach, we were already coming in. And they were afraid to drop the bombs for fear they'd hit us in the landing craft. So much for pinpoint bombing. Huh? So they dropped their bombs 3 miles inland, which didn't do us any good. There was absolutely no holes in the beach for us to get into. There's also a famous saying, which is it's alluded that Brigadier General Dutch Coda from the 29th Division said, but it was really my regimental commander, Colonel Taylor, when he finally came ashore. He says, there's 2 kinds of people on this beach, those that are dead and those that are going to die. Let's get the hell out of here.
Tout le monde savait que le débarquement allait venir, quoi. C'était un mot qui était connu de tout le monde. Mais comme je vous l'ai dit tout de suite, où on ne savait pas trop, toujours avec l'espoir si ça pouvait se passer ailleurs que chez nous. Et c'était la surprise que ça se passe chez nous quand même. On imaginait que ça allait être plus facile du côté du Pas-de-Calais, quoi. Donc chez nous, ce matin du 6 juin, réveillé par le bruit d'abord, et en se levant, ça a été toute la côte, tout le secteur de côte était une grande lueur rouge qui apparaissait à l'horizon avec le bruit. Et je me souviens qu'il faisait nuit parce que ma mère était affolée un peu, me dit va voir dans la ferme à côté, voir un peu s'il entend aussi ce qui peut se passer. Donc je suis parti avec une lanterne tempête, il n'y avait pas autre chose à cette époque-là. Et le voisin m'a dit va te recoucher, c'est simplement le débarquement. Et là, on a eu la certitude que c'était les Américains qui arrivaient, mais ça ne faisait pas de bruit. Parce que ces Américains avaient d'abord, on l'a compris après, avaient des semelles de caoutchouc, alors que les Allemands avaient des semelles à clous. C'est dans un silence total. Ils n'avaient pas de jeep, c'était de l'infanterie qui arrivait. Donc on est monté là, voir sur le bord de la route. On se dit, ils montent par là. Et on a vu ces fantassins qui montaient de chaque côté de la route, l'arme au poing, en faisant bien attention qu'il n'y ait pas surveillance. Il y avait des Allemands face à eux. Ils se sont arrêtés à l'entrée de la ferme. Et là, on a eu l'explication. Il y avait des Allemands signalés un petit peu plus loin. Et ils ont attendu qu'un char arrive pour passer devant à ce moment-là. Parce que, en fait, la route était bien surveillée par un avion, un Hypercub, il appelait ça, qui surveillait en permanence au-dessus de la colonne qui avançait. Le char est arrivé à partir devant. Les Américains se sont assis là un petit moment. On a tout de suite parti vers eux en leur offrant des liqueurs. Non, on était venu chercher des liqueurs, du Calvados, du cidre, et ça a été... On essayait d'en donner à tout le monde. Les Américains nous ont demandé quand même de goûter avant d'en boire. Ils se méfiaient un tout petit peu. Et puis ça a été un envahissement de soldats, des JMC, de tous véhicules de toutes sortes. Les champs, ça s'emplissait partout. Et donc, de temps en temps, on assistait aux blessés qui venaient ici se faire soigner. Et malheureusement, un matin, donc on a aperçu un soldat, un mort, quoi. Il était allongé sur un brancard, recouvert d'une couverture. Et moi, avec mon frère, on a été soulever la couverture pour voir comment c'était la tête d'un mort. C'était notre but, quoi, voir comment il était. C'était les malades qui étaient là. Donc, il y avait aussi des soldats qui étaient malades. Je crois bien qu'il avait attrapé un coup de froid après la baignade qu'il s'était faite à Omaha Beach. Donc, on a vu des malades se faire soigner là. Et aussi, ce qui va vous paraître amusant, c'est que c'était la première fois qu'on les voyait avec un thermomètre dans la bouche. Nous, c'était pas de cette façon-là qu'on prenait la température, quoi. Mais là, on voyait ces rangées de soldats américains avec ce thermomètre.
Moi, je me rappelle de monter dans la cabine d'un JMC qui avait une tourelle dessus, avec une mitrailleuse. Les balles étaient là, tout était là. Et les Américains ont cassé la croûte, ils nous ont laissé jouer à fouiller.
On
faisait des découvertes formidables là-dedans.
Les Allemands n'auraient pas laissé faire ça, quoi.
Je me demande si on avait appuyé sur la gâchette, s'il n'allait pas partir une rafale, hein, c'était tout près.
De temps en temps, tombaient des obus allemands qui nous tiraient dessus. Les Américains répliquaient évidemment. Pour un obus allemand qui arrivait, il en repartait au moins une 20 ou 30. Il est passé quelquefois des avions allemands. Une fois, il en est passé 4, il en est revenu qu'un. Les 3 autres sont tombés là pas bien loin. Ça aussi, chute d'avion. Et les Américains sont précipités avec le fusil, le mitrailleuse. Ils ont tiré sur l'avion qui passe avec tout ce qu'ils pouvaient. Je crois qu'il est tombé un peu plus loin, il n'a pas rentré à sa base non plus, quoi. Les Allemands avaient peu de chance de circuler en avion, quoi. C'était des libérateurs quand même, hein. Ils ont été accueillis à bras ouverts, ça a été une fête, mais chez nous particulièrement plus intense puisqu'on est resté presque 2 mois avec eux. Alors qu'à beaucoup de places, la libération, ça a été comme le passage du Tour de France. Vous savez, la caravane qui passait et qui lançait des petits gadgets et des objets, des chewing-gums et des différents trucs. Alors que nous, on a assisté au débarquement, bien sûr. On était sur le site du débarquement, mais le site privilégié quand même. On était avec les Américains, alors que 3 kilomètres après, là, de l'autre côté de Comont, ça a été le massacre. Quand même, des bombardements, des tueries. Il y a eu beaucoup de civils de tués de l'autre côté, hein. Il y a eu beaucoup plus de civils de tués dans notre région qu'il n'y en a eu sur le bord de la côte au débarquement. Finalement, il n'y a pas eu beaucoup de civils sur la côte de tués au débarquement. Si d'un seul mot, vous savez, on aurait pu raconter la guerre et en utilisant qu'un seul mot, j'aurais dit la peur pour moi. Hein, la peur nous collait partout à ce moment-là. Peur aussi que notre père, soient amenés à des actions de résistance ou de désobéissance involontaire, tel qu'un aviateur tombé vienne demander du secours à la maison. Ça, c'était des choses qui ont été faites dans différents endroits et qui étaient assez... ça s'est pas toujours mal passé, mais quelquefois ça s'est mal passé. Quand les Allemands le savaient, c'était la déportation, la fusillade immédiate, quoi. On était quand même au courant des otages qui étaient fusillés quand il y avait des répressions ou n'importe. Ça nous traumatisait énormément, moi gamin tout au moins, ces histoires de morts, ces histoires de gens qu'on tuait comme ça. Et donc il en faisait toujours une publicité. Les obligations qu'avait la population pour ces soldats allemands, notamment la surveillance des parachutistes. Donc il y avait aussi à planter les asperges à rommel, comme on les appelait, ces poteaux dans les champs qui étaient assez grands pour éviter que les planeurs puissent s'y poser. Ils étaient aussi obligés d'aller faire la surveillance des voies de chemin de fer en direction de Mollé-Litry et Bayeux, qu'il fallait faire comme ils voulaient, comme ils disaient. On n'avait pas le droit de circuler la nuit.
The whole idea was to move back, and they were going to pop smoke. So when the bombers came in, they knew bomb this side of the smoke. Well, the Army asked them to come in parallel with the front line. For some reason, the 8th Air Force came in over us, and the smoke blew the wrong way, and the bombs fell on the Americans at St. Lo. The hedgerows. You're familiar with the hedgerows. They're squares. Maybe some are 200 meters wide, 300 meters wide, but it's like steel wool. You can't get through them, right? So the Germans would be in one end, and we'd be in the other end. My company was banging away with the Germans on the other side, and here comes this cow, right out in the middle of the field. And the cow, with the firing, just stops dead. It dug all 4 feet in, right? Here comes this poor French farmer. I mean, the firing is going on. He runs right out in the middle, and he grabs the rope, which is through the cow's nose, and he's trying to pull. Well, the noise scared the hell out of the cow, and the cow was dug in. Wouldn't move. He's pulling. Well, everybody stopped firing. Because the German army, probably farmers, ordinary people like us, the Wehrmacht, they were good soldiers, the German army. All of a sudden, an automatic weapon on the left flank opens up and cut this cow right in half. And the farmer is still pulling, and he pulled this side. The front he pulls away, and the back part it stayed there and sort of quivered a little bit and then fell over. Now, do you know what the Germans did to us? They threw everything they had at us, because they probably were farmers. You know, ordinary country people. They had mortars, automatic, I mean, you couldn't believe it, the incoming fire. And we found out it was some guy from North Carolina, a better guy, that he could cut this cow in half with his automatic weapon. Stupid, right? We took a lot of casualties.